So my name's James Preston, and previously of the Queen's College, University of Oxford. Yay, Oxford! Today I work for AN Security. We continue to... Shush you! The funny thing is, if you reference last year's presentation, I said boo myself to kind of preempt yourself. We do cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is fun because we get to laugh at people we don't like. For this presentation, I'm going to first demonstrate to you an identity-based attack. This is real. This is happening right now, and I can talk to some effects about that. What happens next? So after the attack is effective, because it's nearly always effective now, what is the threat actor going to do next? Why did it work in the first place? And importantly, how can you spend money or use the little box, use the little key that's been in every single one of your bags? Every single one of your bags is a free FIDO2 security key to stop this. So first, let's demonstrate the attack. This looks like the Microsoft 365 login page, yes? Oh, 1 second. Play video. No. Play video. So we're going to type our username in. Today we are user1 at ansdev.onmicrosoft.com. We press next. We enter the password. Typing. And the next thing that's going to happen is we get multi-factor authentication on our phone. I can't show that here, but we get the number 35. I poke it into the phone. And then the authentication is approved. Come on, video. And we're logged in, right? Fantastic. We're now signed into our account. And if we look on our app, if you've got the bad version, bad implementation of Microsoft Authenticator, we just get the no extra information. You just kind of get, are you signing in? You enter number 35. You press yes, everything is good. If you've got the slightly enhanced version of Microsoft Authenticator, fantastic. It now tells you that you're probably in England. Well, yes. This attack was originated in England in a DigitalOcean data center. Now, going through that authentication process, meanwhile, in the back end, myself as the threat actor have actually directed you to a phishing website. Have actually directed you to not just a website which is going to capture your username and password. We can see it here. There's the username, there's the password in the text fields. But we've captured something far more important. Something which quite simply for some organizations can be their worst hour. We've captured the session token. This session token is sent by the service to your device. That is a JSON blob which represents your identity logged into that service. We've captured it. We can now move it on to another system. So in this case, we're going to load up the Firefox browser. I've got installed in the Firefox browser a little cookie editor tool here, just to prove to you that there's no magic happening here. We go to portal.office.com. We see that we're redirected to the Microsoft 365 login page. You can see me clicking around. The screen capture when I originally ran this didn't actually record me interacting with the cookie editor, but if you want to see that later, by all means, come up and see me. I paste in my cookies, I go back to portal.office.com, and instead of being directed to the login page, I'm signed in. And if I look at the user account, I'm now signed in as 0365 user 1. By capturing that session token, I am now that user. I can replay that token at will, poke it into any service I like, and I am now logged in as that user. And this is easy. This is trivial to do. In fact, here is that page running now. login.m365.cn365.net. It looks like the Microsoft 365 login page because it is. It is a proxied version of that page. It has a trusted security certificate signed by the good people at Let's Encrypt. Thank you very much, Let's Encrypt. Look, no magic here. True security certificate. And this is an attack which threat actors are using now. One of the frameworks that you can use to deliver this attack is called Evil Engine X or Evil Jinx. You can go to GitHub and download it. You can run this yourself. You can do this after this presentation. You can go and do this yourself and start phishing people. It's highly illegal. Please don't do that. Unless you're authorized. If any of you are really bold enough and at the end of this presentation want me to phish you, I'm not adverse to the idea. I might need you to be witnessed by someone to say that that's okay, but I'm not against the idea. So the threat actor is now logged in. They're now you. They now own your identity. What happens next, right? What happens next? Well, we get attacks like this one. The Striker attack, you might have heard it in the news on the 19th of March there, reported by the Register. In this instance, nation-state threat actor. It was the Iranians that have been attributed for it. Who it actually was, who knows? Could have been the Russians, probably the Russians. They executed an attack. We don't know if it was an identity-based attack, but we can assess it as highly likely. And the next thing that they did, bearing in mind they're in the nation-state conflict with the United States at the moment and other allies, is they went to a load of devices in Microsoft Intune and pressed wipe.
Well, that's good in Oxford College, we can't use it.
Well, there you go. But you get the idea, right? The next thing the threat actor does depends on what their objectives are. In this case, they started wiping devices off the face of the planet. Another example, you're probably seeing all these supply chain attacks going on at the moment. You're probably seeing all these libraries, these NPMs, these things that you can import into other pieces of software. Well, one of the key ones that's going around at the moment is stealing SSH keys. Threat actors are injecting themselves into packages, into repositories that other people are downloading that they're then running, which are stealing these identities. Now, the magical world of security is focused around cost, really. How much does it cost the threat actor to deliver their attack and be successful? Now, at AN Security, we have this marvelous world where we group threat actors into 4 different levels. Nation state, determined highly skilled, determined low skilled, and casual threat actors. The determined ones are the ones that wake up in the morning and say, I'm now a threat actor, I'm going to go and hack insert organization here. And they're usually motivated by financial gain. The casual threat actors, these are your script kiddies, no particular motivation, no particular direction, they're doing it for the fun. And nation states, we don't know really what they're up to. But the problem is you can go and sign up for your domain, you can go and get a little bit of VPS, and the security certificates are provided for free, and for less than a couple of dollars, effectively, you can execute one of these attacks. And that brings us on to this new world of lethality, right? This style of attack is going to be leveraged by nation states. This style of attack is going to be leveraged by our determined nation threat actors. And the problem is nearly every single form of multi-factor authentication is prone to this attack. Nearly every single form. If you use push notifications, if you use app number matching, as we saw in our demonstration with Microsoft Authenticator, if you use anything that's got a rolling code or SMS or email, this attack will be effective against it. So, first Star Trek reference. Shields up! Red alert. Name the movie. Come on, someone. Nemesis! Oh, I love this bit. This is just amazing, right? This giant chunk of a Romulan warbird is about to hit the Enterprise and like, bam, this massive release of energy. It is amazing. Can you imagine how many gigajoules of energy that must have been? And you know what? The shields are like, yeah, fine, 10%. We're now at 10% shields. Those of you who are really smart will have realized that Riker, before this actually impacted, ordered extra power to the front shields. So we need some shields up, right? Let's get some energy into the system. Let's go and defend ourselves. So this is more a slide for me to remind myself that I have indeed revoked that session that I just demonstrated in plain text, so that no one goes and starts impersonating user1 at ansdev.onmicrosoft.com. But to then demonstrate to you, we need to be able to detect, prevent, alert, and respond to these attacks. What are we going to do that? What technologies do we have available to us, in particular, to prevent this style of attack? So built into Microsoft, in Entra, built into Duo, built into Okta, built into all these marvelous services is the notion of phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication. Phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication is the key for us. Now, one implementation of phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication are these FIDO2 security keys, FIDO2 being the technology, U2F being the technology there. 2 quotes here, one from NIST, one from CISA. CISA even going to the point of saying that it is the gold standard for MFA, just like the gold contacts on this FIDO2 security key is the gold standard. And they identify 2 mechanisms which are phishing resistant. 1, FIDO2, predominantly hardware security keys, but there are other form factors that it can come in. And the other, we'll cover a little bit later, PKI-based authentication. So, a couple of weeks ago, I gave this same demonstration to our internal team at AN Security. And it kicked off the longest conversation on Teams that we have ever had. 401 messages. Battlestar Galactica reference included. And we've actually started doing this as part of just pre-sales. It is so cheap, it is so easy that I have my team members, my associates, my colleagues demonstrating this to customers once they've appropriately consented and saying, you're a bad man, insert name of staff member there. So what's our implementation? What's our technology way of solving this? Well, predominantly it revolves around FIDO2, Fast Identity Online version 2. There is also a predecessor to it, Universal Second Factor. Both are basically as good as each other. There are two main, not two only, ways of implementing it. One is hardware security keys. This is the route that I would suggest you go down, because it is portable. It is something that you can move to other devices without too much energy or effort. Or alternatively, you'll find that pretty much every modern operating system has an implementation of FIDO2 built into it as well. The problem is, if you lose your phone, you lose your identity. If you lose your laptop or have to reinstall Windows on your laptop, you lose access to that identity. It's not as portable, it's not as easy to interact with. It is an option, but broadly speaking, I'd say go FIDO2 security key. For those of you who say, oh, but James, they're going to lose that, they're going to eat it, their dog will destroy it, yes? You can have these little baby ones that actually just sit inside the USB port and ever so slightly emerge themselves so that you can interact with them, and you just leave it in the device. And that is perfectly fine for the style of attack that we're trying to prevent here. So to build up this demonstration, I went and spun up an instance of FIDO2. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So here's that security key plugged into a little desktop computer that I use for these purposes. Let's go get ourselves enrolled, right? So we're on the mysignins.microsoft.com website. We go to security key, we press USB device, we have the key plugged in, we set a pin on the key. You unfortunately can't see it in this part of the demonstration because, again, screen capture wasn't entirely working for me. Oh, here it is. There we go. We set a pin on the key. One of the handy things about that pin is if you get that pin wrong 3 times, you are forced to unplug the device and plug it back in again. You have a further 3 attempts, after which you can unplug it and plug it back in again. And after that, you have a final, typically 2 further attempts, at which point, if you still get the pin wrong, so the device has been lost or stolen, it will fry itself. It will delete the identity that is on that device and there is no way to recover it. And that is your way against brute forcing it, right? So there is effective brute force protection plugged in there. So how does this actually work then? What does this do to prevent our attack? Let's show you what a normal login actually looks like. So in this case, instead of typing in our username, we say we're going to use a security key. We plug the security key, we enter the PIN, we touch the gold disk. That proves that we're physically there and it's not a remote threat actor. And we say, yes, now we're signed in. That makes the sign-in experience a lot easier. The user doesn't even need to know their username anymore. And we've eliminated the password. Passwords suck. The year is 2026 and we're still using passwords. So how does this actually stop the threat actor? How does this actually stop our attack? So let's show you what it would look like if the threat actor attempted to convince you to use your security key. Here in the top left-hand corner again, login.m365.cn365.net. We go to sign-in options, we plug in the key, and quite handily, we enter our PIN. Let's make sure I've got the right demonstration here. Yes, no, we do have the right demonstration. We enter the PIN. This key doesn't look familiar. This is the key bit. This is the security key saying, I've looked at that website. That website isn't the actual login website. That isn't the trusted website. That is not login.microsoftonline.com. That is something different. Up to this point, every form of authentication has been you proving that you are who you claim to be to the service. The key thing with phishing-resistant authentication is not only are you going to prove to the service that you are who you claim to be, but before that happens, the service needs to prove to you that it is the true legitimate service. unless you're going to login.microsoftonline.com, it won't let you sign in. The key will resist it. It is phishing resistant. It's not phishing proof. Why is it not phishing proof? Because somewhere inside a big donut shape or inside a big monolithic building in America, there is probably a way to get around it anyway, right? Because that's the world that we live in, yes? But it is resistant. There is no known way in the public domain to get past this as a form of authentication. That is near impossible to accomplish in the real world, in every other discipline of IT and cybersecurity, isn't it? Right? You can have the very best network anti-malware, you can have the very best endpoint anti-malware, but some malware will still get through, won't it? An implementation of FIDO2 done correctly, a phishing-resistant authentication done correctly, that's the key bit, there is no known way to compromise it. That is so rare. So what actually stopped it then? Here I would strongly recommend, go have a read of this Microsoft article. This video is being recorded. I'll put it online on myworldofit.net sometime later today, so you can grab the links off it then. But effectively, there is some cryptographic magic going on, which the site needs to use to prove its identity. The keys are tamper resistant. So if you were to smash it apart and get at the key inside, it should be difficult or impossible to actually recover the identity material that's on it. And like I mentioned earlier, the PIN is tamper resistant or brute force resistant as well. So James, that's really cool, but I've got one already. I use it already. And I'm sure many of you could proudly pull out your YubiKey or your token 2 key. Come on, guys, do it. There it is. Look, one second. There's my one. Oh, keys unite, yes? But here's the problem. For it to be effective, for it to be truly phishing resistant, it must be enforced. If you still have an alternative route, if you can still use number matching, if you can still use email as an alternative way of logging in, it's not yet phishing resistant. It's certainly a little bit better, but it's not phishing resistant. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. And we have to think, well, what about our other IT administrators? We've proudly got our YubiKeys here, or our FIDO2 keys, or whatever it is we've got, yes? But what about the other people who have access to the same administrative interface? Have they implemented it too? And that's where I say, until it's enforced, you've not done everything yet. It's just security theater, right? It feels good, it looks good. Yeah, okay. But it's just theater, doesn't matter yet. So let's have the usual pushback. James, I like free. Can I do something for free? Well, maybe you've got a network security appliance. Maybe you've got a network firewall. Here, what we find is I actually have to go and allow list that domain. I have to go and allow list that website on this example here being a Palo Alto Networks firewall to let me get to that site. It is quite effective at detecting these phishing pages. And that's all fun and games right until the phishing page is delivered to the user's mobile phone, which in Oxford and in Cambridge, BYOD is very prevalent, yes? And suddenly that network security doesn't actually apply in the first place. And there are other things you can do, right? So we can do security awareness training. Come on, someone laugh a little bit louder for the microphone, please, yes? Yeah. I have, to date, I go around and I do kind of security reviews. And to date, I've only ever seen one package that I thought, my God, that was actually engaging. I've learned something myself. That was fun to do. And I've done dozens of these. There are loads of other ways, right? IP address restrictions. But IP address restrictions doesn't work in a BYOD environment. We operate in a BYOD environment, don't we? What else is there? Okay, so maybe we can use some logs. Maybe we can go and identify, one sec, that IP address is actually a DigitalOcean address, block the address. But again, none of these things are going to prevent it successfully every single time. That Swiss cheese model that Espin was talking about, if you were at his presentation earlier today, it's the Swiss cheese model. Some of it's going to get through. We just need to that final layer of cheese, which actually blocks every single attack. And that way to do it is FIDO2. There are also things that the website operators themselves can do. So the person who went and invented Evil Jinx or wrote the original code for it, they've got a really good presentation, again, linked here at the bottom right-hand corner. There are loads of things that the website operators can do, like a redirect. If it sees their page, it immediately tries to redirect it to their page. That's a really handy way of ensuring that you're only logging into the correct page, but they don't do it consistently. And hell, if Microsoft isn't doing it, it's not good enough. So, FIDO2 it is! Engage! Who can name the starship? Who I haven't told it to already. Who can name the starship? Come on. Who can name the starship? Its name was mentioned once in Lower Decks. Once. Has no one really got it? That is the USS Van Sitters. It arrived at the Battle of Douglas Station. It was an awesome scene. This sovereign class rocking up and you're like, oh, this is going to be amazing. It's going to trounce those little AI-powered ships. And then it gets kind of blown up a little bit. So let's start thinking about fixing this problem. Let's start implementing FIDO2 and phishing-resistant authentication. And here I have the notion of maturity levels, maturity models. Step one, no enforcement of phishing resistant. Has anyone progressed beyond level 0, where they have phishing resistant enforced? I'm going to put my hand up because I kind of know, but no one. Seriously, right? And that's the world that 99% of organizations sit in at the moment. After that, we say, okay, what are the identities that if a threat actor were to compromise, they could actually bring one of these game over scenarios, like the Striker attack, where every single device had the Intune remote wipe command sent to it. Well, it's the IT administrators, isn't it? Let's go after those highly privileged user accounts, and for that, enforce the use of phishing-resistant authentication such that it becomes the only mechanism that can be used to log into our sites and services. And we go, well, what's after that? Who's next? And that's typically where I think about who are the users in your organizations, the HR administrators, the bursars, the finance administrators, these people who have access to bulk sensitive data. These are the ones that we can target next. Now, after that, we can then go, does the user base, does the rest of our users actually need to implement this? Is the cost of a £22 FIDO2 security key produced in Europe worth it? £22, people, come on. Is it worth it? Well, if we think back about 6 years ago, when I first joined AN Security, every single week we had a customer call up and say, James, we've been phished. And we said, do you have multi-factor authentication? And they said, no. And they went and implemented multi-factor authentication and the number of phishing attacks dropped. The problem is, as I demonstrated at the very beginning of this presentation, there is now a way to get past every single other form of multi-factor authentication that isn't phishing resistant. And we are just starting to climb that curve of threat actors starting to use this. And it's not just the nation states. It's the determined threat actors. All they need to be able to do is deliver a text message to your user's phone, and if they deliver enough of them, someone's going to click on them. If they get the IT administrator at the wrong time of day when they're tired and they're hungry and they just want something to work, they're going to get them. And we're in game over scenario. And for the cost of a £22 security key, and then some other stuff, we can stop it. So let's get started. Step one, inventory. Go and identify all the services that you have. What are the methods of authentication implemented on them? After that, prioritize. What are the services that can do the most damage? Some of you, for instance, I know, have a mobile device management service that isn't Microsoft Intune. If a threat actor could log into that and start pressing remote wipe, or perhaps pressing download data, how much damage should they do? And then, of course, implement it. And get stuck in that loop of implementing, prioritizing, and inventorying as you implement new services. There are two main ways of implementing it. One is natively, if the service supports FIDO2, if the service supports OpenID Connect, two different native ways of implementing this as a service. There is an alternative method, which I call a kind of authentication wrapper, which if you have services which doesn't support FIDO2, doesn't support OpenID Connect, that you can still implement phishing-resistant authentication, particularly for administrators. I've got a demonstration of that a little bit later. To run this, you need an identity service. You need something which the security key is going to use to communicate to validate identities and say, yes, that is the person who is who they claim to be. Option one, of course, is a nice, easy one. Use Entra. It's controlled by the university. You've got no real way to implement that. Is there anyone genuinely here from Oxford or the Cambridge equivalent that wants to admit it? No? My challenge is give people, when they register a SAML2 service provider, the option to implement phishing-resistant authentication. It is 6 boxes inside Entra to go and turn on for them to turn it on for you. For specific applications. That would be amazing if they could do that. The alternative and the route which we see most of our customers going down, and I see some of them here today who have implemented this, is either with Okta or Cisco Duo. Some of you I know will have Cisco Duo already, and you might have the free version, free for 10 administrators. That does not support phishing-resistant authentication. It does not include the features necessary for it. You have to get the one level up, which is $3 per user per month. £22 security key, $3 per user per month. Start with your administrators. Most of you will have what? 3, 5, maybe 10 administrators at the tops. It's not that much money. One of the annoying things that I find about Microsoft Entra in their implementation is they still try to get you to enroll weak factors. It is really difficult to not hand over mobile phone number and Microsoft Authenticator app to Microsoft's implementation of this. Inside both Okta and Duo, you can completely turn those off such that the user is never even asked for it. That really increases the security solution as a whole. There are other options as well. Ping ID, RSA ID+, there are loads of technologies, just so long as they allow the enforcement of phishing-resistant authentication. So let's go and register for Duo. So here using James at jpre.net, I've registered for a Duo account here. It's quite nice, they're recommending passkey. Passkey is synonymous with FIDO2. If you see passkey, just think of it as FIDO2, but another name. FIDO2 is a nice geeky name, isn't it? Passkey, yeah, that sounds like password, but it's a key instead, yes? Fantastic. What you'll notice is that if you've got a nice helpful Windows device, and I believe macOS does something very similar, is it will offer first to save it to the device itself. That's great, right until your laptop dies, right until the SSD dies, right until the TPM inside the motherboard dies. You want to save these to a remote device, at least one remote device, FIDO2 security key. And ideally, you would have at least 2 administrators registered. Because if one administrator loses their key, the other one can set them up with a new one. If you are in a lone administrator instance, create a break glass account. Create a second account that's not your account, that's got a separate key registered to it. Stick it in a tamper-evident bag, hand it to the college bursar, say, keep this in the college safe. Only allow me to access it. Golden. So we're going to click the change button and we're going to save it to the security key. In the case of Duo, they don't actually require a PIN. They do an alternative way of implementing it. So they do password plus security key instead of security key with PIN. That is still phishing resistant. Yes, the threat actor could compromise your password, but they still haven't compromised the full identity. There is a small caveat to that. If you're an organization that allows username and password-based login to your Wi-Fi networks, you can envision a situation where a determined, highly skilled threat actor would compromise the username and password, set up in the hotel opposite of your college with a Wi-Fi antenna pointed out the window, and now they're logging into your domain Wi-Fi. When you return to your organizations next week, please go to Microsoft NPS, Free Radius, whatever it is that you've implemented for your individual colleges or departments, and check that no one can log in with just username and password, please. Because there's still a way to at least get network access. And if you can get network access, what we keep seeing is organizations go and turn off MFA if they're inside their trusted IP address space. Well, now we're single factor, right? So you can envision situations where that might be a bad thing. So back inside Duo, administrator login settings here, we can disable everything else. We can just untick all the boxes. Everything listed here, YubiKey AOS, that's an old feature, that's an old implementation on YubiKeys. Duo push notification, that's the app. Mobile passcodes, hardware tokens, SMS passcodes, they are all weak. They are all trivial to compromise. Passkeys is the one to leave enabled. And we can then do the same for our users. Again, enabling it such that passkey is only option, everything else is disabled. Now, what you'll find is a lot of these security keys have some kind of a companion app, something which can be used to manage the key. And in the most recent implementations of them, you can set minimum pin length. Previously, the minimum pin length for most of them was either 4 or 6 characters, which, to be honest, is still quite weak. We want to be hitting at least 8. And ideally, again, we want to be a bit longer than that if we're really concerned about brute forcing. To be honest, 8 as a minimum is a really good place to aim for. One thing I noticed about these token 2 keys that you'll find in your bag is that some services, particularly on Apple iPhones, require that you untick this enforced verification box. When I set up the Bitwarden password manager, unless I had that unticked, it wouldn't allow me to log in on an iPhone. So just something to be aware of there. So what can we secure? Well, to be honest, pretty much everything. Logins to VPNs, that's a real key one for me, because I think in the terms of network security, it's the space that I predominantly work in, of course. But don't stop there. Firewall management consoles. If you've got your own college HR service and it supports some form of identity service, if it supports Entra or Duo or Okta or whatever, fantastic, let's use it for that. Maybe you've got a Nextcloud instance. And yes, you can even do it for those of you that are left with vCenter. It's a pain to set up, but you can do it. And when we look at the application libraries of these services, we see a whole load of things. Nextcloud, FortiGate firewalls, Meraki, Drupal, your website content management system. I'm going to call out this one in the bottom right-hand corner, Sentinel-1. An EDR product, an XDR product, a one single central place for all your cybersecurity in one single console, where the threat actor can interact with all of your security platforms, where the threat actor can establish remote control over your devices. If you compromise the Sophos console, if you compromise whatever it is you use in Cambridge, you know what I would do as a threat actor next? 1, Microsoft Defender. Here's my signature for my ransomware. Allow list. Wait an hour. Trickles down to all the computers, trickles down to all the servers. Next thing, Microsoft Intune. Here's a custom software package that I want you to install on every computer. Bam! Ransomware everywhere. It's easy to do. ScriptKiddie can do that. They just need the identity. So let's go and implement it. So here on a Palo Alto Networks next generation firewall, a virtual machine series, we've got SAML identity provider. Usually there's some form of downloading metadata from the identity provider, importing it into the service, downloading some metadata from the service, importing it into the identity provider. The two have a little chat and everyone's happy. So here we've imported it into Duo. And then I can give you a short demonstration of what it's like to log in. So here we're on our firewall, and instead of using the username and password boxes, we're going to go to use single sign-on. We enter our username. Implementations vary. We press continue, we're redirected to Duo. Duo, I'm in private window, so it hasn't remembered my email address. I type in my email address, I press next. I'm going to load up my security key. You can see me virtually typing the PIN. Again, screen capture didn't capture it in this situation. I say, yes, that's me, and I'm now logged in. Didn't need a password. It's still 2-factor because it's the hardware key plus the PIN on the key, and I'm now signed into my firewall. It knows who I am, it's done securely, and there is no known way for a threat actor to compromise that. It's an alternative implementation. So this is great when you've got native support. Right? When the service that you're logging into knows how to stalk SAML2, knows how to talk OpenID Connect. What about when that's not the case? Remote desktop for Windows servers. You might go, oh, James, I've got the Duo free edition. I use multi-factor authentication to go and secure that. And I go, cool, but it's not phishing resistant. Not phishing resistant, doesn't support hardware key. This is where what I call authentication wrappers come in. So here we place a firewall between the user and the service that they want to log into. When they go to log into that service, the firewall redirects them to a login portal. That login portal authenticates them through Duo, Okta, Entra, whatever it is that you happen to be implementing, and says, yes, that person is who they claim to be. And it then activates the firewall rule that allows them to actually log into that service, to actually use that service. It's not seamless, it's not single sign-on, but guess what? It's really strong security. This is particularly effective when you pair it with something that you might call a jump station or a bastion host. This is where you take all your administrator interfaces and say, I can only get to those in network policy and client firewall policy from these specific devices. And I see some of you here today who have implemented that really well, in fact. And here, using that authentication wrapper is a really strong case for it. So this is an example of what our rules might look like. I've got a domain controller in the servers network. I need to allow DNS to continue to function, so I'm going to exclude it from the captive portal. But if I want to go from the end user's device network to my servers, we're going to hit this authentication portal. We're going to be redirected to auth.jpre.net. Let's see what that looks like. So here I've got a console that I'm going to set up a ping into my domain controller with, and we see that we don't get any responses. I'm going to load up the remote desktop client and try an RDP, and I get an immediate network connection failure. Can't access domain controller, can't ping it, can't see it over DNS there, or can't see it over remote desktop. So I've got our website hosted on there, and I go to the website on that domain controller. I'm redirected to my captive portal. I enter my email address. It prompts me to use a security key. I think this one actually captured it. Yep, there it is. I enter the PIN. I touch the key. Two-factor authentication. Yes, it's me. I'm now signed into the device, and I get the website that I just wanted to go to. And what we'll now see is now that the firewall rule has been activated, I can now ping the host. I can now log in via remote desktop. And although ping doesn't support strong authentication, although remote desktop in this implementation doesn't support strong authentication, I've wrapped it around it. And you say, James, that's nice. But really, I want to log into my computer, and I want to do it in a native phishing-resistant manner. So, an alternative way of doing this, particularly for Windows systems, if we think back to these original statements, CISA and NIST, PKI-based authentication, security certificates. These keys, these token 2 keys, support what's known as smart cards. And you go, James, smart cards. I remember those when I worked in the NHS. That's 1980s technology. And I say, yes. And it works great in the year 2026. So these keys will appear as a smart card. There is a guide on the Token 2 website. If you print it off, it's about 4 pages long. That takes you through setting up smart card login. You issue a 10-year-long security certificate to the key. Get yourself a new key in 10 years time, for instance. You say, we're going to use smart card reader. And we can now use this to log into our computers. That guide is a nice, simple guide. It prompts you on how to set a PIN, prompts you on the way to secure that PIN, set the PIN on the device, go and enroll your certificate. It's built straight into mmc.exe with a certificate manager. So we set up our smart card, we enter the PIN for the smart card. Let's go and use it to log into our Windows systems now. So when we plug into our computer, where previously you see this little kind of key icon for username and password, we now have a little smart card icon. That's the key plugged in. And again, you can get one of the little keys that just sits in the USB port. It stays there. It's not remote. Doesn't come with you. It stays with the device. Perfectly secure. We enter the PIN and we log in. We can enforce it because, again, this stuff only works if it's enforced by ticking this little magic box inside the Active Directory console for that user account. Smart card is required for interactive login. And that also works over a remote desktop. So if we want a remote desktop to another server, we can use a smart card for it as well. Really cool, really powerful technology from the 1980s. It's like Radius. It's just never going to die, is it? Radius is so flexible. It's marvelous technology. And you say, James, that's amazing, but I'm a Linux admin. And I go, yeah, that's fine. I don't have a good demonstration of it here, but you can set these up with public-private key authentication. Private key is stored on the device. When you SSH to your Linux box, prompts you for the PIN for the key. Congratulations, you're now logged in. I don't have a good demonstration of this, but again, Token2 website, there's loads of guides out there for setting this up. The handy thing there is, if you generate that private key in a strong manner, and you store it in a strong manner, it's now phishing resistant, because the only way that you can truly interact with it is, again, with the security key. So when one of these kind of info stealer vulnerabilities or one of these info stealer malware tries and steals your private key, instead of stealing it from in memory or stealing it because it's sitting on your solid state drive on your laptop, there's no way to steal it from one of these. These are designed to resist that. So that's securing not just SAML, not just smart cards, but also SSH access as well. So closing thoughts. If it's not enforced, it's not phishing resistant. You've got these keys, right? They're sitting in your pockets, they're sitting in your bags. Great, well done. You've made the first step, but it's step -1. We haven't actually made it to 0 or 1 yet, yes? If it's not enforced, it's not phishing resistant. Start with administrator accounts, and please start doing this now, because we are just about to climb that curve. This stuff is so easy. Generative AI in particular has made it easy to craft the perfect phishing email. The scale that comes with automation systems has made it trivial to go and target thousands of administrators or hundreds of thousands of administrators in minutes. Start with the admins, and whatever pace you think you're moving at, the threat actors are moving faster, so please start soon. At the start of this presentation, I showed you the attack was trivial, and it truly is trivial. Yes, there are some technologies which are going to get in the way, but threat actors will target you where those technologies don't apply. The most common form, in fact, is SMS. There is effectively no filtering on SMS. Email, great. Okay, email can go, that looks like the Microsoft 365 login website, but it's a proxied version of it. An email spam filtering can cull that. One of the really cool things that I've seen threat actors do, and we have seen this, because we as AN Security have been targeted by this. I have in my password database credentials for hundreds of organizations. We are a target. They send us Teams messages. Again, there is very poor filtering on Microsoft Teams. It's not like email where it's nice, mature technology. So, the final options. If you want to say, hey, James, that sounded cool. How long did that take you to set up? And I would say for this presentation, it was 3 hours work. For you, a little bit more. jpreston@ansecurity.com. For the, hey, James, that was a really cool presentation. Here's $5 for a coffee on whatever the website is these days. jamespreston@outlook.com. And as I mentioned, this presentation will be on myworldofit.net sometime later today, assuming the recording functioned. Thank you all. That's all I've got. Questions? Go. Okay, so this is where single sign-on really comes into its own. The implementation that I've shown here is focused on businesses where you only really need one account for your end users, and for your administrators, maybe 3, sometimes 4. Early keys would support about 25 different identities on the keys. The most recent reduced keys, or most recently kind of available keys, are hundreds now. For you as consumers, right? For you as people going and logging into social media, logging into whatever it is you store your photos, that could be a problem. In reality, we've largely fixed it now because it's hundreds of identities. But in a business setting, single sign-on, one single service, it really doesn't matter. Does that answer your question? Excellent. Next. Yes. So I mentioned here, again, this is the difference between consumer and business. In the business world, at least 2 administrators, each of which have at least 1 key. And that way, if one of them loses the key, The other one can set them up with a new one. All these services, Microsoft Duo, Okta, whatever it is, support multiple keys. If you are a lone administrator, again, you could set up multiple keys. In fact, in use for me personally, I have 3 different keys. One sits in my desktop, one sits in my laptop, one is on my keyring, and they are all set up with the same identity. Answer your question?
Yeah.
Yep. Next. Go on.
That there are certain ones where you could just need each step on the
Yes.
plug into the device and forget about them.
Yes.
Isn't that bad practice? What if your kid gets compromised with someone? Yeah, it's a good hit, right?
Yep. Cool. And the style of attack which you described there involves physical access. 1 second, let's find the picture. There's the picture. So the style of attack that you described there is physical access. None of the demonstrations that we've given here revolve around a physical attack. Yeah, that they all revolve around a remote threat actor trying to compromise an identity. If you are concerned about physical attacks, right, and to be honest, it's unlikely. If we take that scale model, it's really quite unlikely. It's usually someone that's going to be looking over your shoulder, right? Yeah. There, it's a matter of that's when we start to use biometrics instead, fingerprint. So built into Windows Hello, for instance, you can use fingerprint or Face ID recognition for it. And equally so, just as we discussed multiple keys there earlier, if you know that your key is being compromised, if you know that your PIN is being compromised, you log into the single sign-on service, revoke that key, and even though the identity is still there on the key, the service will no longer accept it. Does anything further to your point? Go on. Yeah, happy with that? Cool. This is the thing, there are different types of attacks. And the likelihood that you personally, unless you work, does your email address end with gov.uk? No, right? So unless your email address ends with gov.uk or something similar, right? The likelihood that you're going to be targeted by a physical attack is exceptionally low. And those organizations, they don't just do single or multi-factor with keys. They will have a 3rd or a 4th factor on top as well to mitigate and remediate those kinds of situations. Anything further to your point? That's it. Yes? Good. We are out of time. However, if any one of you have a bold streak in you this afternoon and wouldn't mind someone else witnessing you saying that it's okay, it's right there. Thank you all.